in essence of everyone's time, it is 9:01, so I believe I'll get us started. So obviously the Delaware Safety Council, the Marion Safety Council trading off. So you have me for introductions, unfortunately, for December. The Delaware Safety Council always has the fun. What were you thinking? Maybe at some point we'll steal that, but for now we'll keep it.
We'd be happy to loan you a cheesy PowerPoint, Matt, anytime.
Thank you. So very happy to have Jared Cass here with, he is the Director of Occupational Medicine and Employee Health with Avita Health System WorkWell. And he'll be talking to us today about a really fun title of Christmas/holiday Cheer-gonomics, which will be a program that will blend the spirit of the season with the spirit of keeping your staff and teams safe and enable them to work at their best from multiple work environments, including home, office, and production floor. And he'll be sharing concrete ideas on which can be implemented immediately, and we'll cover many topics from the home office, including moving snow. He'll hope that this is interactive, so we hope we'll get some interactive participation here today. But before we get into Jared's presentation here, I did see Laura Smith, our BWC representative for the Marion Area Safety Council, here to give us some BWC updates.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Just a quick few updates from the Bureau. I'll turn my camera on so you guys can see me. Hi. The BWC, we have 2 new safety resources out there. We have safety talks and written safety program templates on our website. That's what we've been doing in our downtime since we can't be out to see you guys. We've been trying to make, we've been doing like that admin back end work. So you've got some templates for written programs on our website, as well as safety talks that you can utilize. So take advantage of those. We just ask that you actually make the written program templates specific to your company and not just leave it with all the BWC logos on there. And we walk you through in that document exactly what you're looking for. And if you have questions, always feel free to reach out. Also, we are giving $28 million in an air quality program for senior facilities. So that's something else the Bureau is giving out, just trying to get that air circulation to get those COVID particles out of the air. Be mindful, OSHA is issuing citations for coronavirus cases. You guys have to have a respirator program if you're exposing your employees to COVID. So that's going to be more in the healthcare nursing home facilities, not so much in your retail or your manufacturing, but you do need to make sure that you're actually still taking the precautions and protecting your people, because it is a known hazard. So OSHA is going to expect you to protect your workers from that. And they've got information on their website, as well as seasonal worker safety, which is probably going to go pretty well with what Jared's going to be talking to you about today with snow and things like that. And then one last thing, if you guys already don't receive, make sure you get on the mailing list or check the website regularly. We have a great safety update done by our library every single month. And they're really good at getting information out there. That's actually where we typically pull a lot of our information for our talking points. So we still can't come out to you guys, but we can do virtual assessments, anything we can try to do over the phone or a Zoom call or iPhone FaceTime. Get a hold of us. We're here for you. We know it's a challenging time and it's challenging for us, but you know, mask up, we'll all get through it together. So thank you guys. Have a great meeting.
There was one question in the chat, just for clarification, that you're referring to adult daycare as well is in the air quality.
Yes, yeah, that's a part of it as well.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
With that, I will hand it over to Jared for our presentation.
All right, thank you, Matt. The presentation's up, correct?
Yep, it's up.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Like he said, I'm Jared Cass. I work for Avita. I have my contact information up here. This is not a talk that I've done before, done parts of it, but not specific to working from home. So bear with me. Most of the talks I do, I've done more than a few times, but that combined with the fact that I'm definitely not a fan of the Zoom. I like to be able to see people's faces and engage people a little bit when I do a presentation, we will work through it here together. So have an audio clip down here. I'm going to play it from a test this morning. I was told you can't hear it, so let's give it a shot here. Abel?
No, there should be
Okay.
an option when you're sharing that it's share computer audio is one of
Okay.
the options. That would
Well,
probably mean we do it.
Very, very short. Basically, it says ho, ho, ho. That's about how excited people are about COVID and what we're dealing with today. So I didn't want to make this a drab presentation, but I figured I'd kick it off with how a lot of us are feeling. So without further ado, we'll get into it. If you have any questions or comments, concerns, I always say, you think this dude's whacked, I can take it, throw it out there, and we'll go from there. So to start out with, we all have some new situations, or at least the majority of us that have not worked from home before. I shared with Matt in getting this presentation together that I was shocked to see some of the percentages of the amount of people that are working from home, and we'll touch upon those here later. I'm not a big statistics guy. I'm not a big, if you do these ergonomic changes and reduce your injury rate by just one, you would save $8 million. Yeah, I don't try to be a salesman. We just try to come up with quick fixes. Statistics also, I find it interesting that 23.8% of all stats are made up on the spot. 72.9% of all stats are made up on the, anyway. So moving on. So when we're talking about the main principles, I think this is a good summary for everything we're going to talk about. The next posture is the best posture. So if you're working from home or working in the office, if I see someone laying down and their head scraping the floor, hanging out of their chair, I actually am not real critical of that, because if they're just getting out of their correct ergonomic posture for a while, 10, 15 seconds, I'm okay with that. So if I set you up in an ergonomic posture and you're correct, you can't stay there. Our body is meant to be, to move. So even if we set you up ergonomically correct, you can't stay there and you need to move around. So sometimes, regardless of the posture, the next posture can be the best posture. I think there's a lot of things that are good if in moderation. Cookies, they're good if in moderation. So some of the things we talk about, you might say, I don't know if that's necessarily the best thing. Well, if in moderation, we're human, especially with the times of stress we have now, we need to figure out a way to all collectively work through this. I was just talking to a peer this morning about how he seems uncharacteristically agitated. He was kind of divulging that to me, and I said, yeah, so am I, and everyone else I come across. So we're all working together here. Then you throw in working from home, the struggles that can sometimes bring on, and it gets tough. Stretching, it's a good thing to do. The general rule is if it feels good, do it. And most times it's a stretch in the opposite direction. So if you're sitting all day or for a significant period of time, standing feels good. If you're standing for a significant period of time, typically sitting feels good. Same if your wrists are bent down, it feels good to take them back, etc. So we can do an assessment and come up with a bunch of fancy words like anthropometric measurements. And when it comes down to it, typically stretches, if they feel good, they're good. And most times when they feel good, you'll notice they're in the opposite direction. Have a neighbor take a look. So whether it be a spouse or a child when you're working from home, but sometimes you say, do I look painful? And people can just really quickly say, yeah, that doesn't look good. Or what do you think about, even kids sometimes will say, I don't know, that they're looking at it just from what it is. And they'll say, well, why don't you stand up for a while? Or you look like you're bent over. Sometimes just having a neighbor take a look at your workstation can help. I've talked before, if you've heard me talk about morale is the biggest contributor to injury. I'm the only child of a big bearded hunting burly welder that doesn't get into morale. It's pretty much shut up and do it. So when I started doing this, I never dreamt that I would be talking about morale and people's feelings and how that can impact injury. But we know now from some studies that I've shown before at the classes by Dr. Maris from the Ohio State University, Matt. Anyway, he's done a phenomenal job of proving that when you're stressed, you have an increased risk of injury. We just don't think that. We know that now. So I joke that if you can't get full extension in your back, and we work in therapy for 36 sessions and we're about to give up, and your spouse calls and says, we just won the lottery, all of a sudden you arch your back and throw your arms in the air and you have an endorphin dump and everything's better. So morale's significant, and we have some troubling times right now across the board. Set a timer. I started back when I would use an egg timer, so I'm not young, but self-assess, take a break, and realize that sometimes you're stuck in where you're stuck. So you're just doing your thing. You don't realize that all of a sudden you've gotten a hungry head and your head's way out over your neck, reaching for the monitor. Your back's slumped over. You've sat on your leg, put your leg underneath you, and now your foot's asleep. So you're not going to have the wherewithal to just pause every 20, 30 minutes and reassess. Truly setting a timer helps. Even if you set a timer in those 20 to 30 minute break, within 30 minutes, you just focus on something different in the room. Your eyes converge to focus at the same distance, at the same monitor all the time. Looking at something different is actually a good break for eye strain. So we want to promote breaks. So they said it'd be fun. A lot of people said, man, if I could work from home, that'd be sweet. And I could get other things done. It would be so nice. Sometimes that's true. Other times it's not. Sometimes you're cooking for kids when you typically wouldn't at work. You get to listen to On Board all day long, not just in the evening when you typically would. I have 6 kids, so I'm well aware of hearing that. You get to watch the dog. You get to listen to the TVs, kids, rocket launchers, whatever seems to come out of the background while you're trying to get your job done. You get to fix all the problems that seem to get fixed when you're not at home. I know sometimes when I'm not at work or I'm on vacation, I don't get a lot of calls, and then I get calls all day long when I'm at work, and I wonder, how did that get resolved when I wasn't here? Because it seems like things went, nothing caught on fire. When you're home, then you're front and center. You can get caught in your PJs on a Zoom call, or maybe if you saw in the media things that are even worse. We're not going to go there. Next, forget to unmute. I've had that happen more than a few times, and I get a cute little note saying, hey, dude, you're not muted. The dreaded Zoom echo that we've probably all experienced. And most significant, social isolation. So when you're at home and you're not getting the interaction, I heard someone last night at a basketball game say, when I do talk to one of the other case managers, we end up talking for like an hour because I hadn't talked to them forever. So it starts out with a work call, and then we end up talking forever. Well, that's not productive, but it's human. So we have to balance, man, I should get off the call and get back to work, but holy cow, I'm stuck in this house and this is getting old. And it's not just working from home. If you're adhering strictly to the guidelines, more or less, you're not supposed to go anywhere. It's not just work, so it's a struggle. Sometimes you recognize even the annoying coworkers were at least adult interactions, and you wish you could go back and talk to them again. And that's probably a shocker. So we know, as we talked, your body works more efficiently when it's not stressed. Traditionally, when we talk about ergonomics, we're looking at force, frequency, posture, and duration. We understand now that we should include morale in that because we understand how significant that is. So ergonomics is basically the study and utilization of anthropometric data to, no one wants to hear that. Long, lengthy, educated definition that a lot of times doesn't make a lot of sense. So basically, we're adjusting the workstation or the work process to fit the worker. Some good examples of that are tilt steering wheel. I highly doubt you get in at 6'6" when your spouse is 5 foot tall and cram yourself in there without adjusting the seat and the steering wheel. It's a common sense approach, and it's actually ergonomics. When you ask about paper or plastic, a lot of people say plastic, and it's not because they're dead set on ruining the environment. It's because it has handles, and it's just more ergonomic. By the same token, even in the workstation and in the work setting, when I think someone needs to raise their monitor, I'll use a ream of paper. And then if indeed that fixes the issues, maybe we'll look on to buying a monitor stand. But that's just a quick way to say, I need to adjust this, and I don't need a $100 quote unquote ergonomic monitor raiser. I can just use a stack of paper or whatever I have, which typically you would have at home. So also, again, as you may have heard, the leading contributing factor to injury is morale, stress, and we have a lot of that. So ergonomics is kind of like restrictions. So when I have an injured worker and I say you're not allowed to lift more than 10 pounds, those restrictions apply at home as well. So if you come in for your next treatment visit and say, I was cutting wood this weekend and man, my back's really killing me, we educate the patient that that doesn't work that way. Those restrictions apply to home. So ergonomic principles are at work. They're also at home. And it just so happens your work and your home have merged into the same. So this affects everybody. So we're going to go through some things here about Santa last December 26th. He was grumpy, and as I said here, when Santa ain't happy, nobody's happy. So when asked why, he rattled off some things. The job's too much, especially as he gets older. I'm not a fan of talking about the aging workforce. I've said before that if you put tools in the same place and you clear the hallways from clutter and you make the workstation well lit because you have an aging workforce, if all of a sudden those people retire and you get a bunch of 19-year-olds, I hope you don't dim the lights, clutter up the hallway. Aging workforce is with all of us, and that's the same for ergonomics. The presents are bigger, heavier, and there's more of them because millennials are spoiled. I mean, anyway, so the chimney is smaller. Well, that's not quite the case, Santa, but I understand. And he's never done well with confined spaces anyway, so he's beyond frustrated. Sitting in the sleigh hurts his back. Have a lot of people say, well, that never bothered me before. Well, I never wore glasses before, but I just ordered them last week. So things happen. The cookies are catching up to me. I'm not talking about me specifically. It might apply, but anyway, his suit is tight, so he's frustrated. He's trying to work smarter, not harder, but he's worried about the overload of the elves trying to wrap all these gifts. So he's stressed, not just for himself, but for others. So he finally gets frustrated enough to say he can't keep doing it. He's tired of the elf injuries. He can't possibly miss work because the world relies on me. He could automate it, but then he's got a bunch of unemployed elves that are frustrated. I think that applies to a lot of us. I take pride in my job, and there's a lot of times where I say, I've got to get this done. No one else could possibly do this, and it's got to get done today. That's not always the case. I think delegating can be a very powerful tool, and sometimes we need to look into sharing the workload. So Santa's not alone. We need to learn to identify ergonomic opportunities, sometimes plan things better, find activities to reduce stress. When your trauma bucket overflows, you're in trouble. So we need to have a release valve on that bucket. Maybe even jump on the treadmill here and there. And the moderation goes, like I said, with the cookies for Santa too. So Santa starts out happy, he gets grumpy, and then the kids are grumpy as well. So for you scholars out there, you're probably thinking, is this Santa story time or ergonomics? You know, what is this dude rattling about? Well, we want to recognize that even Santa's sick of COVID. He is recommending that we all smile more, say please and thank you more. When you're out at a store, grocery store, wherever you are, people are grumpy. You say please and thank you, especially around the holiday season. You see people kind of smile if they have their mask off. They get a pep in their step. We need to force that. It's not going to happen easily, and that's going to help us all. Fabricate adjustable workstations for the elves because they're not all the same height, although we recognize most of them are short. Listen to your body. If it feels like you need a break, you probably do. I talk to people and they say, yeah, my back's killing me. Well, do you want to take just a 10-second break into extension? I don't have time. I've got work to do. Okay. After engineering out ergo concerns, you want to evaluate a task variation or job rotation. So you don't want to rotate the same types of job tasks. You want them to be differing, but only after you've done your ergonomic due diligence and removed the issues rather than just spreading poison. So if I say we've got a poorly designed job here and ergonomically it's a nightmare, so we're going to say that's a gallon of poison. Rather than get rid of the gallon of poison, we're going to divide it up into quarts and give it to 4 people. That doesn't make sense. So job rotation isn't always the solution. Like I said, take time off to perform different tasks, promote routine stretching, any stretching. And just to illustrate my age, there's the egg timer that when I tell people now, do you have an egg timer? Every one of them says, I have a phone. What? I'm like, okay, moving on. So again, story time or ergonomics? Yes, it's both. So we want to spread work out throughout the year. Santa can do a good job of that, but we can also not procrastinate, chip away at tasks sometimes better than we do, especially when we're working from home. Sometimes we have more flexibility. Get him a smaller bag or a container so you can't carry as much and get better coupling rather than just gripping the bag. Upgrade the sleigh to have an adjustable chair with appropriate back support, and maybe even look at handles and non-slip surfaces on the sleigh. And remember, again, commonly the next posture is the best posture. So progression of an injury starts out with a hassle commonly. I've talked about this before, but if you're at home and you're working, you notice your back's a little sore and you call me up and say, hey, you're this ergo dude, wanted to let you know my back's bothering me. And I say, well, are you over 40? And you say, yes, I am. I'm 47 like you. I say, yeah, suck it up. My back hurts too. Well, then if the second day you call me and say, my back's still hurting, that's a concern for me. You've established a pattern where it wasn't a quirky thing, you slept wrong, etc. We want to take a look at that. So if you're having issues at home, I don't want to hear from you when it's an injury, because I'm going to say, how long has this been bothering you? Oh, about 6 months. Man, did it get better and worse? And so you were kind of concerned. No, it just consistently gotten worse. But we have a much better chance of fixing you in the hassle discomfort stage, or implementing some ergonomic principles well before it progresses all the way to pain or injury. So listen to your body is the key there, and realize if something's not right, it's not right, and it doesn't always just go away. When you're 18 and your back hurts, it seems like the next day it doesn't hurt. When you're 47 and your back hurts, sometimes the next day it hurts even worse. So ergo glasses, where you talk about what the heck am I even looking for? I'm not an ergonomist. I just am forced to work at home. My kids are home, COVID, wearing the stupid mask, etc. I wouldn't recommend buying something just because it says ergo on it. So a lot of people are trying to boost their sales by slapping ergo, and there's no real credentialing that has to occur to ensure that it truly is ergonomic. However, you do want to spend the money and buy the right product the first time. I have worked at places before where they're buying $99 office chairs, and then they're upset because we have a back injury and the chair breaks in 6 months, and we're buying another one when we could have spent $500 with a highly adjustable chair with a lifetime warranty, etc. So I know budget is always a concern for everybody, but we need to make sure we're at least looking middle of the road here, because it's your body and you only get one of them. You don't get to take the receipt, turn it back in, and get a new one. Talk to vendors about trials. I have a lot of vendors that say, well, you can't trial this product. You either buy it or you don't. Well, I know I have buying power, and a lot of times I might say I'm going to buy 300 chairs, and if I can't trial one, then I'm not interested. But even with one chair, most vendors will flex a little bit and say, I understand you don't want to make an investment and not know if you're going to get any reward. So we'll look into that. COVID does make it challenging, because a lot of times they have trial chairs and they just rotate those around. And with COVID, of course, we have issues. Check the warranty. If the product doesn't give you a good warranty, it probably doesn't matter. That's a sign of an issue. I recently bought a new tractor and had a 6-year bumper to bumper warranty. And my dad said, well, that just means obviously it's going to break a lot. What's it matter? It's always going to be at the shop. I'm like, okay, well, I guess there's two sides to everything. But adjustability, we're all different. You want to make sure you have a product that is easily adjustable and has adjustability features. You want to educate yourself on how to adjust it. If you have a chair with 2 knobs and I say, here's a chair with 8 knobs, it doesn't do any good if you don't know how to adjust those knobs. Ask the experts. There's plenty of people in the community that you could call up quick and say, hey, you have any suggestions? Wrist rests were the #1 selling ergonomic item, I think, in 1997. Wrist rests are not good, but we got in a phase where there was a small wrist rest, and then there was a foam wrist rest, then there was a thick foam wrist rest, then there were the lovely gel wrist rests, and then the thick gel wrist rest. The bottom line is, studies show that wrist rest is to rest when you're not typing. Many people plop their wrists up on that and type away, putting pressure on the carpal tunnel, increasing the risk of having some nerve issues, if you will. So just because it's selling like hotcakes doesn't mean it's the best thing. And wrist rests were a classic example that they sold like crazy, and no one was really educated that, that's supposed to be when you stop typing, correct? And they're like, oh no, you prop your wrists up here and you go to town. Actually, that's not accurate. And do I need to do this? So root cause analysis, I'd given an example one time where an individual was getting some lateral epicondylitis, tennis elbow, from grinding metal, rust off of metal parts all day long. So we looked at, is the RPM of the tool appropriate? Are they putting new discs on the grinder? Do they rotate right and left? Do they take micro breaks? Is the height of the platform that the work is being performed on appropriate? So you come up with all these ergonomic ideas, but if you pause and just say, why is there rust on the product? Well, it's because we store it outside, and actually we build a new warehouse and part of it's empty and we don't use it. It's there for growth of product, but we could use that now. I never really thought about it. So we're going through all kinds of ergonomic interventions, which are good, but the bottom line is let's pause and sit back and look at why we have this issue to begin with. And sometimes that fixes the problem. So the ergonomic product sales department will say, if you learn how to use this keyboard, it'll increase your speed by 6% or 7.8%, or depending on what day you talk to the salesman, 38%, whatever. So just because it's ergonomic and someone throws it in front of you, I do ask people to try a new product for 14 days. Typically in 14 days, we can see if it's going to work or not. The first day, a lot of times they say this is never going to work. A lot of times after 14 days, they say, you know, this does work. How to sit at a computer correctly. This is actually accurate. You want your eyes level with the text on the top line of the monitor, neck bent slightly in deflection. You never want to go into extension at all. You want to be neutral or maybe a little bit of flexion. If you think about when you read a book, you hold a book out in front of you, and typically you're looking down a little bit. That's just naturally where the neck wants to be. You don't ever hold a book above line of sight. Yes, you could say, well, that's because my arm would fatigue, but we just don't do that, or we shouldn't. Shoulders are down and relaxed to the side. Hands and wrists are straight. The feet and the lower back are supported. And then when you're working from home, we've got, that's pretty darn close with this person laying there on the floor. The other one, I do talk to a lot of, I call them tough guys. You know, we had jib cranes. We had ways to make our job easier, but I could bench press 300 pounds and I was a welder and I didn't care. Well, you see them walk around the office like that now, and you think, well, maybe they should have worked smarter, not harder. Hungry head. We talk about how you turn into a turtle, and I've actually taken a picture from the hallway. I shared this one time before, but they had neck strain, headaches. I took a picture from the hallway. I walked in. I said, hey, how's it going? Well, good. I don't do the hungry head anymore, but my neck still hurts. So I showed them that picture and said, actually, you know, look at this from the hallway. And they literally said, yeah, I don't do that anymore. I was like, oh, but that was a picture. Okay, sure. People just don't realize it. So again, when that egg timer goes off 30 years ago, or your iPhone starts dinging, do a self-assessment, you know, get your head back on your shoulders, straighten your back up, stand up, move around, etc. And the last one there, if you slow down typing, this injects coffee directly in your fingertips. Probably not far off from that, but I don't think we're there yet. So talk briefly about, I was trying to think of things that could happen if you're home, you might be shoveling snow, and that might not have been something you had done traditionally. We tend to not get as much snow around here like we used to, but shoveling snow, you've got this shovel, the guy's bent over, it's not good. A lot of reasons why we're going to talk about. The ergonomic handled shovel actually does much, much better. When you get as old as me, or you have a lane that's over 3/8 of a mile long like mine is, you go to this, which is even better, but sometimes it's not an option or it's not needed. One of the things I was thinking is, do you even need to be doing it? So back to the task analysis of the rust on the metal parts. I had a neighbor where I lived previously that had a nice four-wheel drive truck, and his wife had a nice four-wheel drive SUV. They were both older. That definition changes as I get older, but regardless, they were older. And we get 2 inches of snow, and he'd be out there. He had had an open heart surgery, which doesn't mean you can't shovel snow after that, but he's out there shoveling, hurrying up because he's going to be late for work. And I walked over, I said, you know, there's 2 inches of snow and you've got a four-wheel drive and so does your wife. I know it probably feels good to do that, but for one, I can help you if you want. And two, do you really need to shovel that much snow off? And he literally just paused and said, well, we always shovel snow. So I said, man, Ford needs to make a better product if you can't get through that much snow with those two vehicles. And we both chuckled. He might have flipped me off. But anyway, we moved on, and we had to stop and think, do we really need to be doing this? So every year there's over 12,000 reported injuries from snow shoveling, 34.3%. I think this is actually a real stat, due to musculoskeletal overexertion of the back. So they did a study on the bent handled ergonomic shovel, found out there's about 16.5% decrease in forces, but way more importantly, you have a much better posture. So you can stand more upright rather than bending over at the waist. So are we older? We're all older, yes. Is it a common task? Probably not. Are we Superman or Superwoman? No, not really. But we get the snow and all of a sudden we say, I'm going to go out, I'm going to spike my heart rate to 90% of age predicted max and go to town. You haven't done that for a while. You haven't done a whole lot of anything for a while. And all of a sudden you're shocked that you hurt your back. If you do the task, it's good to take rest breaks like any task. It's good to focus on breathing like any task. Be realistic about what you're able to do. That might go back to the delegation like we talked about prior. Rotation. So if you've got the day to shovel the snow, maybe use that as your rest break. Go out, shovel for 5 minutes, come back in and go back out. I'm not very good at that. When I start a task, it's going to get done, period, and everybody needs to get out of the way. Well, that's not necessarily how it needs to be done. And do you need to do it? Another thing you might consider is hire the neighbor kid. He's ambitious. He wants $5, or I guess in today's world, $50, and you can have him maybe take care of that, him or her. So Matt, if you don't mind bringing up the Word document I had sent.
All right. I think I set it up so we can both be sharing our screen at the same time. The Word document?
Correct. Please.
All right. That is
Any
great.
questions while Matt's getting that up or comments?
Can everyone see that? Can anyone see that? Yes, I'm getting some yeses.
So we're good to go?
Yep.
Okay. So Matt had asked about a handout or something that we could provide to people in attendance regarding ergonomics. This is taking from Human Tech. They do a great job with ergonomic training, so I definitely want to give them credit. I've gone to probably 6 of their courses. I've gone to dozens of classes, Harvard School of Public Health, a lot of places. Human Tech does a great job. They're out of Michigan, so I definitely want to give them credit for doing a good job, and it's too bad they're from Michigan, but they are. Last spring, I'm going to hit some highlights on here. Last spring, you're told all of a sudden you're going to work from home for a few weeks. Then all of a sudden, well, maybe a month or maybe a couple months or maybe a year. Or actually, we did a study and people are just as productive. So maybe the rest of your career, et cetera. So we got thrown a curveball here. As Matt and I were talking about yesterday, as of August 2020, approximately 42% of the working population in the US is working from home full time. 82% of employees prefer to work from home a few days per week when offices eventually reopen. So the first thing was staggering to me was 42%. I work in healthcare. A lot of people I hang around work in healthcare, and none of us work from home. So that was odd to me. And then 82% of employees prefer to work from home a few days a week. So there, that moderation thing popped up again, that everything's good in moderation. So taking frequent standing breaks. Research shows that employees who work from home are more sedentary than those who work in the office. To add some movement back into your day, take at least a 10-minute standing break each hour. Egg timer. Yes, I'm old, but if you set that timer, it reminds you to get up and move around. Sometimes you might need to go make copies. You might need to run back to the office and get something rather than work for 7 hours and then all of a sudden make copies and run to the office. Break those tasks up. I've actually taken the wheels off of people's chairs in the office when they wheel over to the copier and they wheel over to here and they never get up. And then they say they have back pain with $1,000 chair. It doesn't matter how much you spend on the chair. If you're never going to stand, we're going to have issues. I think it's a good point to allocate time to eat, exercise, and sleep. Close your laptop until tomorrow. So when the day is done, it might not seem like it's done because you're still at work because work is home. Turn off the email preview. I know I can be delving into a task and something pops up and I don't care what it is. All of a sudden I want to jump to that and it's very concerning. And you feel like you're multitasking, but some studies have shown that that actually isn't making your day more productive. Turn off other phones if you can. The security system notifications. I know I was home waiting on a package and I got a thing, oh, here's this, here's that. If you're home, you probably don't need that. Sat phone updates, that's a joke. Gun broker bid notifications. I think I've shared I'm a gun guy, and when I get a ding that all of a sudden I got outbid, all of a sudden that's the priority. Well, it can't be because I'm at work. eBay, same thing. Facebook friend notification. Matt finally, he got over the Ohio State issue that we destroy them every year. He wants to be friends. Can't live without Pinterest posts. Man, one of the best, coolest Pinterest posts pops up and you got to stop. That is your break time tasks. So those types of things I just rattled off, let that be your break. When the timer goes off, check those things out. However, I would remind you that when you jump on your phone or you're still on your computer checking those types of things in this digital age, you're not really getting much of a rest break. Next thing here, as we go down, next posture is the best posture. I just want to hit that one more time. If your workstation is set up appropriately, you'll be more comfortable and you'll be more productive. As a guideline, we have some things here about tips for the neck. So your neck should be straight. You want to be looking at the top line of the monitor when you're looking straight ahead. You don't ever want to look up at all. That's any kind of type of neck extension is not good. If you find your chin tilting down or up or twisting side to side, take a look. Remember that hungry head happens quite a bit where all of a sudden you're kind of searching for the monitor, and that's not good. So what can you do? You can actually use the television, HDMI or VGA connections, and you can hook your laptop up to that and have a nice big screen. We had a basketball game last night, and when we got home, the boys wanted to watch the Ohio Report, which my son was last night, the player of the game, but that's definitely not why we're here. But anyway, I was proud. So they wanted to watch some of that, and rather than watch it on your phone, we threw it up on the TV. Stack your monitor on books, boxes, etc. Clear up clutter so you can actually work in your environment. Tips for the arms: your elbows should hang naturally beside you. If you're repeatedly or commonly reaching for something, whether it be the phone, the stapler, etc., outside of the range it would be if you hug someone, that's called an extended reach, and you should redesign your workstations so you don't have any extended reaches repeatedly. Don't reach for your armrests on your chair. I've had a lot of people that have armrests that aren't adjustable, so they force their arms down or they lift them up and set them up on there. If you're going to have to do that, it's probably better just to take the arms off the chair if that's possible, or get a chair without arms. So don't get too stuck on a chair with arms necessarily. And then adjust the workstation or work environment to match you, not the reverse. So talking about working with laptops, a lot of people get focused on laptops versus desktops, and the laptop is in my lap, hence the name. Am I really set up the way I should be? It's kind of similar to the aging workforce. You can talk about it all day long. The bottom line is we are getting older. You do have issues with the laptop. You need to vary your setup and make sure that you're comfortable, listen to your body, etc. So we don't think about a laptop as our phone, but I think probably eventually people are going to start calling or making people aware that your phone is a laptop. So you think about, am I on my desktop or my laptop? Your break is looking at your phone. More visual eye strain, maybe even worse than the laptop. Sometimes not the best posture. Sometimes laying in bed until all of a sudden you get awoken by the phone smacking you in the chest when you drop it as you nod off. In 1981, they launched the first laptop. And about 50 years ago, the Apollo 11 space launch occurred. And last year's iPhone, not this year's iPhone, but last year's iPhone was 120 million times more powerful than the computer that sent people to the moon, and 7 million times more memory than the computer. So when you say, well, I don't have a laptop, I've got a phone. Actually, you have a mainframe, if anybody remembers what those are, right in your hand. So don't get too caught up on my work environment at home, laptop versus desktop. Get off your phone. Try to make time where you specifically set that phone down. I'm horrible at it, I'll admit. Probably some of the worst of people that I know. And I get teased that that's my oxygen. We go to run for lunch and we pull out the parking lot. I don't have my phone. I got to go back and get it. It's pretty pathetic. It also promotes social isolation. So we're dealing with a lot of stress and we're at home and we have ergonomic concerns. But I don't know if you've heard this before, but the phone gets you in touch with people far away and far away from those beside you or in front of you, eating lunch, spending time, etc. And it definitely does. So I'm not going to get all sappy and teary-eyed on you, but the truth of the matter is you have an extremely powerful computer in your hand that a lot of times we're not set up in an ergonomic capacity when we're using it. Moving on to tips for the back. Again, I would definitely check the phone timer. Check your butt cheeks. Are they almost sliding off the chair because you keep scooting forward, getting closer to the monitor? Check your neck. Check your eye strain, your shoulders. Again, is your back relatively straight? Your legs, are they firmly on the floor or are they wrapped up underneath you? I have some people say, well, my legs always go to sleep. So, well, it's curled up underneath you. Well, I know, but never did it before. Well, you were never 47 before. So things like that happen. Building a standing workstation. If you heard about the treadmill workstations, those have more or less become known as a little bit of a fad. A lot of times we had people actually getting hip issues because they would straddle the treadmill because they couldn't do fine motor coordination tasks with the mouse, etc. So they would just shred that or straddle the treadmill. Next thing you know, we're delving into work, and 45 minutes later, you've been in that position. All of a sudden, you have hip discomfort. So standing is good and sitting is good. Again, moderation. Typically, you want to stand or sit no more than 4 hours a day and no more than 2 hours at a time. I know in some of this information, it even says half-hour periods at a time. So less duration, the better. But to be realistic, I definitely wouldn't do it more than 2 hours at a time. Lighting can be a big concern, especially when we're not set up in an office environment. So people talk about open up the shades and get some sunlight. If you're looking into light, your pupils want to constrict, and then they try to dilate to see the computer screen, and that's a lot of eye strain. If there's light behind you, it glares off the monitor. That glare significantly increases your visual fatigue. So as best you can, you want lighting directly above you. In a home environment, that can be challenging, but just something to consider. Bonus tips for working from home.
Jared,
Yes.
real quick for clarification on the standing desk. So that was no more than 2 hours at a time. So that wasn't, or that's not daily for the standing desk.
Correct. What the most recent studies that I've seen that are good studies that make sense are you don't want to stand or sit more than 4 hours a day, period, and no more than 2 hours at a time. So again, it kind of leads back to moderation. We're just switching it up.
Thank you.
Yep. Move around a lot and try working on different surfaces around your household. You know, sometimes it works. You might be surprised. When you take a phone call, I don't think a lot of us cradle the phone. A lot of times we're using a headset or we're using speakerphone. But if you're not, you probably should try to do that. And when you take that phone call, I know I got tagged by one of my coworkers. I was on the phone and I unlocked the back of my chair and let my chair go all the way back. So I was reclined like I was about to take a nap. And I was on the phone. When they opened the door, they said, "Boy, you're pretty relaxed." I'm like, well, I sit up straight while I'm typing. And when I take a phone call, I quickly unlock that and recline, as the next posture is typically the best posture. So as it says here, the novelty of working from home wore off weeks or months ago, more than likely. Our mental well-being is just as good as our physical well-being. So those are things that we need to make sure we think about. You don't want to work where you relax. So try to get a designated spot at home that is your work location. Close the door at the end of the day and avoid the temptation to go back and jump back on the computer, etc. I sent an email to my staff a few weeks ago. I said there's a lot of positives going on, but they may need to pause longer or look a little bit harder to find them. They may need to say please and thank you more because it's good for all of us. Having a little bit of time at home to feel good about maybe changing the laundry over or getting some tasks done mixed up in the day might make you at the end of the day feel a little bit better because you've gotten more done than you may typically get done at home. I think a routine is good to stay in. Don't forget to take a break, including lunch break. Hopefully on that lunch break, you're not glued to the phone, and consider that a micro break from being glued to the laptop screen before you're glued to the TV for the evening. Call coworkers rather than texting them. I think that's a great one. And I tell my staff, don't feel guilty about a 5-minute catch-up call. If I see two staff members talking for a few minutes, man, they're stressed. We're at capacity. We have a lot of people who have COVID. I'm not going to come over, especially unless there's something of priority that needs done right then. If I see them chatting about a sporting event or frustrations with one of their family members or someone that's ill, I don't rush in and say, guys, come on, get to work. Again, moderation. So family is family and work is work. Now they're both, or they're the same, I should say. I think it's a good idea to try to pause before the family gets home. So you might be stressed and sick and tired of work and you're frustrated. A lot of people like the wind down time on the drive home from work. So my day could have been less than desirable. By the time I get home, my goal is that when I hit the door, I'm a fairly neutral, if not hopefully maybe a cheerful guy. That's challenging when you're at home because you didn't get a drive, you didn't unwind, you literally just hung up the Zoom meeting, which I can't stand, by the way. And there's your family saying, we're home, and I guess we're going back to virtual learning next week. And my teacher didn't send this, even though he said he emailed it. I never got, holy cow, here we are. Welcome home, and I am not ready for you to be home, and you're not really ready to be home. So no one wants to come home to a worn out, eye strain infested grump. So if Santa's working on ways of getting back to his cheerful self, I think you can too, although I recognize that it's a challenge. So last thing I have here, Matt, if you don't mind bringing up that PDF file.
Let me bring that up.
Questions?
I did have one question on the, well, maybe you're going to talk about it in here, but the chair. What do you, in your opinion, what are some of like the best chair features, adjustments that really make a difference in terms of a good chair versus a bad chair? The knobs in the back for that you can tighten, is that actually helpful? Or
Well, a couple of things. One is making sure you have some type of lumbar support. Some chairs don't. You want to make sure you have low back support. Like in this picture, you can see her back is supported. This is just a regular standard chair, not adjustable, but trying to get the message across that it can still be a fairly supportive chair. Adjusting where that lumbar hits you is nice if you can. And another big one is the seat pan depth. The seat pan, which is where your bottom is actually sitting, if you can adjust how shallow or deep that gets, that helps, because when you reach back behind the back of your lower leg, you should be able to put about 2 fingers in between there and the chair. If you sit all the way back in the chair and you're short, that's going to put pressure on your leg because it's kind of cutting off right there. If you're a taller guy sitting in a shallow chair, you're kind of hanging out of the chair. So the general rule is we want a couple finger widths between the back of your leg and the seat pan edge. Another thing I like is a waterfall edge. So the front of the chair kind of slopes down a little bit, so there's less likely to have an impact or contact stress right there. So typically I'm looking at, is it adjustable? Do we have lumbar support? And hopefully that seat pan depth is adjustable or it fits you. And then we can go from there. I also like the chairs that unlock the back so that you can take a break and kick back for a little bit to get a different posture. I think we're less focused on chairs these days because we're all talking about sit-stand workstations. So if the chair isn't of the ultimate performance, sometimes we can get away with that because we're not in it nonstop. So getting up out of a chair, even if it's a good chair, I think that's a good idea to do too. So I don't think I necessarily need to go over this. This was just a good handout that touches upon some things you need to consider when you're setting up your workstation. I don't really like keyboards or mice with a cord. When you do a time study and you see how many times they pull the mouse up and they flip it around to get the cord back where they need it, they're constantly just flipping that around. You do a time study and realize how many times they did that. Cordless is a much better option. I know years ago, everybody was going to flat screens, and we got a flat screen when our, as my kids call them, fatback monitors or fatback TVs. When our monitor went out, we were allowed to get the new monitor, of course, and it was a flat screen. So we were around hoping and praying that our monitors would just die, or trying to figure out ways maybe we could short them out because the cool monitors were the flat screen monitors. The fact of the matter is they didn't do a whole lot for reducing visual fatigue, but man, were they cool, and we all wanted one. So it was nice when our monitor finally died, we could get a new one. So same thing with the with the cordless. IT would say, man, you don't need cordless. Like, is that a big deal? Well, to some degree, yes, I think it does help. So Matt said 45 minutes to an hour. I think it's been about 45 minutes, maybe pushing 50 minutes. So rather than me rattle on, are there any questions or things that I spoke or that you like clarification on, or things that I didn't address that you thought this dude rattled about Santa and didn't even hit this?
I'm looking at the chat, just making sure I didn't miss anything here, not say anything. Except
Can
for that there was someone who said they definitely wanted the slides from the presentation, which yes, I'll be collecting these from Jared and sharing all those with everyone here and everyone in Safety Council, along with his content information and all these handouts that he's gone over as well. Make
So
sure you
Matt
guys-
really pushes participation. So can someone just check the box and throw out one question so he can at least say we had one comment, question, complaint? I don't care.
I have a nice info to share from with working from home, folks.
All right.
That's one. Oh, is there any difference based upon the surface you are standing on at your stand-up desk?
Yeah, that's a good question. And thank you for asking unsolicited. Anyway, I would say anti-fatigue mats are good if you're going to stand for any significant duration. I usually say if you're standing static for more than 30 minutes, we probably want to look at an anti-fatigue mat. Static is static. You're truly just standing there. You don't move 4 feet away and come back, etc. So if you're at a workstation where you feel like, yeah, I'm going to be standing right here more than 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, I would look into something that's somewhat forgiving. Similar to the wrist rests, the ergo industry went crazy and said, if a 1/4 inch thick anti-fatigue mat is good, a 3-inch thick has to be so much better. The only thing an anti-fatigue mat does is as you make very small adjustments with your lower extremity muscles, that promotes muscle pumping, which will reduce the amount of fluid and fatigue. So if you just sit with your leg crossed, it goes to sleep. If I stand in one spot, our body needs motion. So we do want something that forces us to make really small movements in our lower extremities to decrease fatigue. However, if you get something really thick, that'd be like me saying, why don't you go walk through sand? Because sand is very forgiving and man, will it make you work. It does, but that's a little bit too much. And if you've walked on a beach for 2 hours and you're not used to it, all of a sudden the next morning you feel like you can't walk. So I would just make sure when you look at that product of an anti-fatigue mat that maybe there's some studies or you've ran it by someone that has experienced with that mat, because thicker isn't always better. And a lot of people push that, and it's not the case.
Another question, is there a different set of workstation setups for older bifocal employees? Computer monitor eye level?
Typically, you want to lower your monitor a little bit so that when you look up, you're not looking up even higher. If you wear bifocals and you're working at a computer a lot, I would highly recommend going to your eye doctor, optometrist, etc., and getting computer glasses. And they can make computer glasses where the bifocals are a little bit different, or they're like digitally they blend in rather than being a real defined line, like gradual. Or they can make them where the bifocals are on top. So when you need your bifocals, you look down, because looking up is not good. So you need to lower your monitor so when you look up, you're not looking up too far, or look into some specific glasses for that purpose. And a lot of times if you get computer glasses, they'll do a very small magnification as well. And that's what I went with for my glasses, and it makes a big difference. So when you're looking at this small font, just that real small magnification makes a significant difference.
Excellent. That is all the questions I'm seeing. And that's some great participation. Thank you for those that asked some questions there. And unless there's any other anything else here, Jared, thank you so much for presenting some really great information there. And gosh, this is it for December. And just want to wish everyone a very safe and happy holidays. And we will be going through and providing all the dates for our January through the rest of this program year here very soon. If not already, I think maybe the Delaware Safety Council maybe released that, or is going to be, we're both going to be releasing that information, but we will continue to do the Zoom meetings together. And we'll just keep everybody appraised on what the dates are for January through July here very soon.
Well, thank you
Thank
for the
you all.
opportunity. Everybody stay safe.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.